Well, we know what's up with Republicans in elected office. Let's check in with Republican icons. We honored Colin Powell and his complexity after he passed earlier this week. The other black former Secretary of State is also getting attention. Now, Rice went on to say she wants black kids to feel empowered by their blackness, just without making white kids feel guilty. And joining me now to discuss is Brittney Cooper. She's a professor of Africana Studies and Women's Studies at Rutgers University and a BNC contributor. Now, Officer Michael Fanone told CNN today that he would, quote, love to move on from January 6th, but until there's accountability, he will, quote, continue to bring attention to the events of January 6th and how we got here, end quote. Is accountability a kitchen table issue for black families?
Absolutely. Voting rights, a democracy in peril, all of these are the kinds of things that black people are discussing at the cookout, are discussing at church, are discussing with each other on a daily basis, because we are all still reeling from the effects of the last election, of the Trump presidency, and of the fight we had to have our votes to count in 2020. And we have spent this entire year not only dealing with the aftermath of a coup that the right wants to deny even happened, dealing with hundreds of thousands of lives lost because of a pandemic that was mismanaged in the last election, in the last administration, dealing with the economic concerns that have come out of that pandemic, but also facing down the very real possibility that given the spate of voter suppression laws that are being passed in states across the country, that even if we go out to express our right to participate in democracy, that our votes will be suppressed, that they will not count. And we had to fight so hard just to get a Biden presidency, just to get Kamala Harris into the VP position, just to get a Congress that could get some things done for us. And so the idea that we can just move on from this brazen attempt to completely overthrow American government in its entirety is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, it strikes me that it's a lot of you didn't actually see what happened that day. What you're experiencing didn't really happen, which is often the story of how black people are treated when they're complaining about other issues like racism or, just daily life as a black person in America.
The term for that is gaslighting, right? Provoking us, doing things to actually make life harder for us, and then telling us that we imagined it all, that the house is not actually on fire, that there is not actually smoke, that our breath is not actually being choked from our bodies. The thing that bothers me about the disingenuous and intellectually dishonest nature of what Condoleezza Rice said is that in the same conversation where she claims that she is so sad about this coup, she then tells the American people, yes, there was a coup, but you need to move on. And this is why we don't need to teach critical race theory, because in the end, we don't want white people to feel bad about the things that they're doing. So so note the moves in the conversation, right? She says, let's just put this coup in the past, even though it was terrible, because white people don't have to feel bad about the past and about the things that they did. And we just need to move on, right? This is precisely why we have to teach critical race theory at all levels of education. Now, typically, it's not taught in K through 12, but a good accounting of African American history should be taught. And so it is super disingenuous for her to say that she was sad about what happened and then to advocate for us not to give children and, quite frankly, American citizens more generally the tools they need to understand precisely why we had a bunch of white supremacists trying to take over the Capitol on January 6th. We had them trying to take over the Capitol while they waved Confederate flags, to be clear, because they were trying to reinstate the legacy of their ancestors who enslaved our ancestors. And we will raise a generation of young people who will be unfit to maintain American democracy because they have no understanding of that history. And there is a black woman who is running around telling people that that is the proper approach to helping black kids to be empowered by race, by not telling the history of why blackness creates such challenges, or rather racism creates such challenges for black people. We should not listen to her. There's complete absurdity. There is no sort of internal consistency in the set of arguments that she makes. And I have no patience for that.
Well, Colin Powell, who we mentioned earlier because he had a similar position in the Republican Party and at the same time and era, he did speak out against the insurrection, but Condoleezza Rice is now saying that she doesn't want white kids to feel guilty. And I wonder, is it even possible to discuss race without a certain level of discomfort?
The challenge is that we have to stop letting white discomfort over crimes that white folks in the past and the present committed against people of color be the driver of public conversations. Actual injury to Black people has to be the manner of concern. Giving justice to Black people has to trump white feelings. Very often, and I've said this many times, white feelings trump Black facts. So white people feel that Black people are being hypersensitive. The fact that racism actually constrains life possibility factually for Black people seems to take a backseat to however white people are feeling about the function of democracy. Now, I think we can say very clearly that perhaps we are harder on Condoleezza Rice than we have been on Colin Powell, even though, quite frankly, both of them were architects of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. They helped George W. Bush to also enact policies that decimated Black communities. One of the reasons that I give Colin Powell a bit more leeway is because at least he was willing to say, I was wrong, we did this wrong. And at the end of his life, he understood that Black communities would be better served by liberal administrations. And that was who he threw his support behind. Condoleezza Rice is still out here arguing for a version of history that is largely about protecting white people's sense of themselves as good people, even though Black communities are being decimated by the set of policies. I mean, these folks are trying to reenact the Confederacy. They're not trying to go back to the Nixon era. They're not trying to go back to the Reagan era, all of which were terrible for Black people. They're trying to go back to some version of American history that we lived through in the 19th century. And Condoleezza Rice, who is a very educated woman, her only sort of view on that is A, move on, and B, white feelings matter more, and we don't want to make white people feel bad. What would happen if her analysis began from the idea that we don't want to make Black people's lives harder and gaslight them by telling them that they can just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, they can just work hard, they can overcome anything, while giving white folks, right, carte blanche, particularly white politicians on the right, carte blanche to suppress the vote, to not pass economic policies that are going to help us, to not do anything about climate change issues that that disproportionately affect our communities. This level of dishonesty is infuriating, because the other thing that happens on the right is that then when Black folks come out and say these kinds of things, then they're waved as a flag in our faces to say, see, even your people think that y'all just need to work harder. That's inappropriate, and we deserve better than that.
And I take your point about the difference and the change that happened between Colin Powell as a Black leader and Condoleezza Rice as a Black leader. Colin Powell was the good soldier, and he put country over party, but Condoleezza Rice seems to be the good party leader. Brittney Cooper, thank you so much for joining us tonight.